الرحمن الرحيم إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إن شاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون قل إن الأولين والآخرين لمجموعون إلى ميقات يوم معلوم ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون فشاربون عليه من الحميم فشاربون شرب الهيم هذا نزلهم يوم الدين نحن خلقناكم فلولا تصدقون أفرأيتم ما تمنون أأنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين على أن نبدل أمثالكم وننشئكم فيما لا تعلمون ولقد علمتم النشأة الأولى فلولا تذكرون أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون أفرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أأنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون لو نشاء جعلناه أجاجا فلولا تشكرون أفرأيتم النار التي تورون أأنتم أنشأتم شجرتها أم نحن المنشئون نحن جعلناها تذكرة
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Secrets of the Life show. I'm your host, Madhia Jalal. It's just myself today. Dr. Ruqia will not be joining us today, unfortunately. So sorry about the delay. There's unexpected levels of traffic here. I don't know if any of you are experiencing this, and so that's why we're starting a few minutes late. But we've got enough time to talk about what we wanted today. You're listening to me on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. You can also catch on live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Remember to call in. It's 01733 602 133. Since the last show, maybe you've had some ideas about forgiveness that you'd like to share or some comments. I also put on my Insta story a vote, and we'll talk about that vote in a little while. So I'd love to hear some votes from you guys live today. You can also text in on 07411 191062. So yeah, let's do this today. We're talking about forgiveness again. So last time we were together, you will have, you did learn from us that forgiveness is important for us, for our physical and mental health. And I don't want to go into that this week, but feel free to listen to last week's show to understand why forgiveness is important for our mental and physical health. But today we want to talk about what are the different types of forgiveness, who we may need to forgive, how do you recognize whether we need to forgive or not? Like, that's a really important question. Sometimes we might be unaware, but there are actually telling signs of whether we need to forgive or are in a position where forgiveness is quite important for us. What kind of actions you might need to forgive, that's something to think about. And how do you actually forgive? We'll try and cover as much as possible this week. So let's get going. So let's start off with the types of forgiveness. So the most important thing that we'd want you to go away with is forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is, in fact, about you. And we spoke about this last week, how when we don't forgive someone, we're holding that negativity, the resentment, the anger in our bodies, in our mind. And so we're actually holding ourselves back. So if forgiveness is about us, then the question is, how do we forgive? Because you and I will both know, when I say the word forgiveness to you, you might be thinking, some of you will have some positive connotations associated to it, and others of you will have some negative connotations. And these come from our experiences. So for those of you who have positive connotations to forgiveness, you've obviously had a nice experience regarding forgiveness. So maybe you did something that was untoward and the other person forgave you. Or maybe someone did something untoward to you, but you were able to forgive them and you built a better relationship. So in these kind of incidents, you have a positive connotation, positive experience. And so when I say the word forgiveness, you're quite eager to hear about it and you want to engage in it. Whereas on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, and it is a spectrum, on the other side of the spectrum, you have those individuals, as soon as you say forgive, they just turn the other way. They couldn't think of a worse word. And, this is not to judge them, and we don't judge anyone, but this is because they've had a negative experience of forgiveness. And usually it's because they've been forced to forgive at a time, either at a time when they weren't ready to forgive, or for a incident that just was unforgivable for them. And so we mentioned those kind of incidents, which are incidents of extreme violence and extreme abuse, that someone's been violated physically, emotionally, mentally, etc. And in those situations, we don't really want to use the word forgive. That's why we use the word let go. And that's what the poll was about on my Instagram story page. And it's actually still on there. So it's Soul Root Therapy. Go on there, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and do vote on there. Because it was quite interesting. There was almost like a split on who voted for let go and who voted for forgive. And really, and really that's not because it's, well, actually that shows how difficult it is to make that judgment. And it's down to our individual experiences. So going back to this idea of the type of forgiveness, and only talking about forgiveness, we're not talking about letting go scenario. We're just talking about the forgiveness scenario, situations where forgiveness can be done. The crime wasn't a violation of your physical, emotional, and mental self, but it was a mistake that someone made. So in that situation, there are two types of forgiveness. One is from the ego. So we call it egocentric forgiveness. And the other one is divine forgiveness. And some of you may have heard of divine forgiveness, but actually it's not really a phrase that we use much in our community or even now in our society, because often we don't discuss spirituality with our regular day-to-day friends and interactions. And sometimes we keep it to one side for more religious circles or for religious friends or religious environments. But we can't actually compartmentalize spirituality in that way, because it seeps into every aspect of our life. We breathe spirituality, whether we do it knowingly or unknowingly. So what's the difference between egocentric forgiveness and divine forgiveness, and why is it important for us to know the difference? So, like I said, forgiveness can either be through our ego or through our divinity. And what do I mean by divinity? I'm talking about our spiritual self that's connected to God. When we choose egocentric forgiveness, it's very contingent. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone does something to you, and you forgive them. You choose to forgive them. You choose to be the bigger person. You decide, I'm going to forgive them for that incident. But if that person repeats that incident, or if someone else does that incident, or if that person does something else somewhat similar or maybe different, and you get those urges of anger, and you go back to that story, that time when they violated you or did something wrong, and that all comes back to the surface, that issue or that incident you had actually forgiven them for, if that is triggered by another experience, then the forgiveness was egocentric. It was contingent. And that's why different scenarios can actually trigger you. And those same feelings of anger, resentment, negativity can come surfacing back, boiling and overspilling. And so the forgiveness is still harbored within you. It's still within your body. You're still carrying it. So you're still experiencing that, PTSD. Remember what we mentioned, the fight, flight, freeze or fawn. You're still experiencing that. And when you're experiencing that, it's your body that's closing up. It's your body that's hurting. And so it's important to recognize that. It's important to recognize whether the forgiveness was egocentric or not. Because if it's egocentric, as I said, you haven't actually recovered from it and it's still hurting you. So not only does that incident that you are upset about hurt you, but actually the fact that you're carrying it within your body, it's still harming you. And what have you to gain from that? And so, what is divine forgiveness like? So, when we choose divine forgiveness, we're choosing the purest form of letting go without any subconscious holding onto grudges or negative feelings. So, because of that, the forgiveness does not fluctuate with your experiences or relationship, or experiences of incidents and places, or experiences of people. So, when others fluctuate in their behavior, your forgiveness doesn't fluctuate. It is done, it is dusted, it's gone, it's in the past, it's history. Not history in the sense that we forget, but history in the sense that we're truly letting go and not allowing it to impact us. Because like I said, when we hold on to something, it is, you know, if you're feeling tired or fatigued, or if you are struggling to sleep at night and you're overthinking, or if you carry resentment towards yourself or anger towards yourself, so you notice yourself being quite short. So let's say you've made a mistake and you get quite worked up about it towards yourself. That's because you're actually carrying some form of anger, stress, stemming from an incident that's either been inflicted by yourself or by others. And I'm going to talk about the type of people that you need to forgive. Because we often think forgiveness is where, you know, we need to forgive someone else for an incident or for an action or for a word that they imparted and that hurt us. But actually, the first place where we need to forgive is ourselves. And some of you might be familiar with this, but most of you will not have considered this, is forgiving yourself first and foremost. The reason why forgiveness needs to begin with ourselves, because when we can't forgive ourselves, we cannot forgive others. So that's actually a way to notice whether you need to forgive yourself or not. Because if you're struggling to forgive someone else, chances are you're struggling to forgive yourself. Let me give you an example. If, let's say, someone abused you verbally, you know, in an aggressive way maybe, or in a way that was very embarrassing for you, and maybe they touched on an insecurity that you're carrying, and so actually the response you're getting is not only the embarrassment that you're experiencing there and then, but actually it maybe triggers something that may have happened in your past where someone else, maybe a parent or an uncle or aunt or a teacher, treated you in the same way and you felt embarrassed. And you know that when you're young, it's the humiliation like roots deep in your bloodstream essentially, and you struggle to get over it. We're very, very sensitive to what people say to us and how people treat us when we're young. More so. When we're older, we can sort of let go of things a lot better. But even as you're older, if someone has said something embarrassing to you that has triggered something that happened in your childhood, then you'll have the same sort of response that you had as a child. So it can feel like it's disproportionate. And so if you're struggling to forgive them, chances are you're struggling to forgive yourself. And this is why you're struggling to forgive yourself. It's not because you've necessarily, humiliated yourself or verbally abused yourself or hit yourself or something like that. No. We often harbor anger and resentment towards ourselves because of not having the boundaries that we needed to have. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say you're in a primary school, you're in a class, and a child says something humiliating, and all other children are laughing at you, and you don't know how to respond, and you just go quiet, and you allow that to take place without saying anything in your defense. Now, I'm not judging that situation, and there's lots of we could sit here and dissect and pick that situation, but we're not going to do that. That's not the point here. The point is, you could be angry at yourself for not having those boundaries. So not by boundaries, I mean having this clarity of how you allow people to treat you and how you respond to people when they are treating you in a way that isn't okay for you. So if you didn't have those boundaries as a child, not to say that you should know how to have those boundaries as a child, but if you didn't have those boundaries as a child and you didn't respond back to that perpetrator and defend yourself, you could carry resentment towards yourself and unforgiving resentment, unforgiving disappointment, unforgiving anger. And when you are so harsh on yourself, it's very difficult to be easy and compassionate towards others. So the first person that you need to start with is yourself, to be compassionate and forgiving towards yourself. I've given you a few snippets of what kind of feelings you may be feeling that mean that you need to forgive yourself. But there are others. So if you have mental health issues like depression, or maybe paranoia personality disorder, maybe you have suicidal tendencies, or maybe you have a chronic stress response, or maybe high blood pressure. These are also indicators that you need to forgive. And chances are that the person that you need to forgive is actually yourself first before you forgive anyone else. And so as you're listening to this, you might be thinking like, wow, like I've not thought of it like that before. Or you might outright be thinking like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you know, how can a person wrong themselves? But it's not that, like I said before, it's not that you've wronged yourself in the sense like you've abused yourself in any way. But the fact that you didn't draw the boundaries that you needed to be seen and perceived in a way that you'd like to be. So let's say at workplace, and you're much older, graduated, whatever, and you're in a professional corporate workplace, and you're all together in a team, and you know people are firing questions at you, and maybe you're doing a presentation, people are firing questions at you, and then someone says something that is slightly humiliating, and you don't respond to it. You allow the humiliation to take place. You don't defend yourself in any way. You don't have a comeback that you like to have. And then the presentation just goes to pieces. It just goes to pots because you've lost your confidence, you've lost your focus, you've lost your clarity because of that emotional overload of that humiliation. Now, you can harbor resentment after that because you'd say things like, why didn't I respond? I could have said this, I could have said that, I could have done this, I could have done that. And maybe even after the incident, you choose not to talk to that person, you choose not to rectify this. You don't go to your manager or your pastoral person, and you do nothing to put an end to those kind of interactions, which is essentially bullying in the workplace. If you don't do that for yourself, you're going to be angry and disappointed at yourself. And you're going to feel like a failure, and you're going to start a journey of curling up into anxiety and depression if you don't make some sort of change somewhere and recognize what's going on. And this is why I'm sharing this with you, essentially, is to empower you and enable you to recognize what's going on. Because when you recognize what's going on, you can do something about it. We say this, and when we're talking to someone else, like, if you don't even recognize what the problem is, how can you deal with the problem? And exactly this is what it is. If you don't recognize that you need to forgive yourself, then how can you even embark on that journey upon forgiving someone else and letting go and being healthier, both mentally and physically? And so look out for these, and look out for how you're talking to yourself. If you're putting yourself down, oh, that was a rubbish presentation. Oh, like I never know how to, do well in interviews, or I never get jobs, or maybe like I'm never going to get that course at university. Oh, I'm too dumb to do this. I always fail. No one likes me. Oh, why should I even bother trying for that job because I'm never going to get it? Maybe you always kind of like go for jobs that you're overqualified for, or courses that you're overqualified for, or you go for friendships that maybe aren't that fulfilling because you just don't think you're good enough. It's at that point when you're holding yourself back from being the best in different aspects of your life, you start to harbor resentment towards yourself. And when you harbor resentment towards yourself, you harbor resentment towards others. You kind of like see life through that lens of failure, disappointment. No one likes me, and so you shouldn't like anyone else. Everyone else is a failure and everyone else is a disappointment. You do start to interpret all your experiences through that lens. To prevent that, you need to start a journey of forgiveness. Forgiving yourself first and foremost, and then forgiving those around you. You might at this point be thinking, you might have people come to mind, or even incidents in your life that have happened that you feel like, I cannot forgive myself for that, or I cannot forgive that person for that. And if it is really that intense, and it might be something that someone else may judge as not an intense experience or incident. But if it's intense for you, then it's intense. That's how something qualifies as whether it's an intense experience or not, or whether it's an overwhelming experience or not. It depends on how it impacts you. It's nothing to do with, there's no, general rule on how to measure impacts of incidents and experiences. Is just down to the individual. So if it's overwhelming for you, then it's an overwhelming incident. When we come back from the break, we're going to go into in a few seconds. When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk to you about how to get yourself, first of all, I'm going to remind you how to get yourself ready to forgive. But then I'm also going to share with you actions that actually you need to do for forgiveness to take place. So do come back after this break, and I'll share those with you.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
HS Lawyers make it so simple. Contact Majid Sarwar or Asad Arif today for any matters relating to immigration, family, business or property. Google HS Lawyers to see why we're the highest reviewed firm in Peterborough, with over 500 testimonies on our honesty, speed and excellent communication, making your legal matter simple, easy and stress-free. Contact us today on 01733 703 978. That's 01733 703 978. Or email us at peterborough@hs-lawyers.co.uk. HS Lawyers, built on values of integrity and respect, with offices in Peterborough and throughout the West Midlands.
Peterborough. Who said good quality fried and grilled chicken has to be expensive? At Sam's, we take pride in every piece of chicken that leaves our kitchen. Just one bite of our chicken or burgers is all it takes to realise we are the best. Visit us at our brand new place at 333 Lincoln Road, PE1 2PF. Or order a delivery through Just Eat, Uber or Deliveroo. Sam's, the home of great tasting chicken for over 30 years.
It's estimated that 5,760 children become orphaned every day, and the numbers are rising. UKIM ensures that the orphans we sponsor receive healthcare, food, education and shelter to show them that there are people who care. This Ramadan, from just £30 per month, you can make a real change in an orphan's life. Your sponsorship will provide them with much needed essentials to ease their situation. For orphan sponsorship, call now or visit ukim.org.
दोस्ता कियां परेशान है
जरा कर है ना सारा सौदा मुक्या वा मुल्का विच पैसे भेजने
हूं नहीं मार फूड वाले की फोन खड़का ते फ्री लोकल डिलीवरी कार मंगवा
अला ता उथे कै स्पेशल आ
उना की लबई हाइजीन च ग्रेड 5 चीजें चंगियां मियारी ते सस्तियां ते नाले ऑफरां ही ऑफरां
और क्या
ताजा गोश्त ताजी सब्जियां ते फ्रूट आटा चावल दालां मसाले ते जूस सारे बिल जमा करने गैस ते इलेक्ट्रिक नो टॉप अप भी करने पाकिस्तान पैसे बिल्कुल फ्री भेजने मतलब के एक चिड़ी ने दूध छड़ी ते हर शय लबनी
और जने ने आप उतरा
Amar Food Store and Halal Meat 613B Lincoln Road Peterborough telephone 01733 687374
महानूर मजीद हूँ और कोर्ट मेरा एक खूबसूरत आशियाना है जहाँ मेरे जैसे हज़ारों यतीम और बेसहारा बच्चों की कफालत बेहतरीन अंदाज में की जा रही है। आए हमारे सरों पर दस्ते शफकत रखें और इस माह रमज़ान अपने सदक़ात खैरात और एहतियात से हमारी कफालत में अपना हिस्सा डालें। अल्लाह पाक आपका दिया हुआ माल अपनी बारगाह में कबूल फरमाए, आमीन।
कोर्ट UK ऑफिस 0300 123 774 court.org.uk।
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the show Secrets of a Good Life. I'm your host Madhia Hajaral and you're listening on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. You can, like I said earlier, call in at 01733 602 133 or text in on 07411 19 1062. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter or Twitch. Today's topic is forgiveness, and we've just spoken about, well, last session we spoke about why we need to forgive. You know, we hold a resentment and anger in our body and it physically impacts us, impacts our health, both mental and physical. And then earlier, before the break, I was talking about who you need to forgive. And we spoke a lot about, well, I spoke a lot about forgiving ourselves and why we need to start off by forgiving ourselves. And only once we've forgiven ourselves can we actually forgive others. And some of you might be listening and thinking, I'm not ready to forgive. The incident that happened is far too heavy. The other person's not even remorse. Who am I forgiving? Why am I forgiving? And if you're in that situation where you're struggling to actually start the forgiveness journey, there is some things that you can do to get yourself ready, get your mind and your body to ready, because it's not just your mind that's refusing to forgive, but it's also your body. And when you relax your body, your mind will also be relaxed. They are interrelated and work in both ways. But you can start with this tip. So like I mentioned to you, when we are holding forgiveness, we're going into a post-traumatic stress scenario. When we're in that scenario, we're very much in a fight, flight. And last time we were together, Dr. Ruqia explained how that is us going into our sympathetic state and that we need to go into our parasympathetic state. Because if I was to describe to you the sympathetic state, then really what we're doing is we're constricting. We're tensing up because we're literally holding. Imagine someone holding something inside their body. And just imagine the sensations that are going through your body, how your muscles feel, how your nerves feel, and how the skin tightens up and you clench up. Your wrists, your shoulders are stiff, and especially if you're experiencing stiffness in the neck, or if you're feeling tightness in your body, then chances are that you're holding on to an anger, an unforgiveness state. So what do we do to get ourselves to a forgiveness state? Even if we're not ready in our head, but we know we need to do it for our health reasons. Like I said, forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for ourselves. Dr. Ruqia mentioned one way, and I'm going to share that with you again because I didn't think we had enough time to go through it actually. So if unforgiveness is a state of restriction, constriction, tightness, clenching, then forgiveness is essentially the opposite state. It's relax, it's calm. And it's easy, you might be thinking, yeah, it's easy for you to say just relax and calm, but how do I actually do it? Because I'm so used to being tense. Here's some physical prompts that you can use. There's some relaxation training that you can do. So we want to be in a position of flow. So imagine you're, swimming against the tide or cycling in the opposite direction of the wind. Imagine that difficulty of going against the flow, essentially. That's what you're doing when you're in an unforgiveness state. So here are the activities. So some of you might think relaxation, and a lot of us equate relaxation to watching TV, and that is not possible. That is a diversion that actually causes more damage. And we spoke about that in one of the earlier sessions. But what you can do is a certain particular type of movement. So to know whether you're relaxed or not, the first thing you should do is tighten different parts of your body. So maybe you clench your fists really tight, your toes, bring it in your legs, in your back. just really slowly, different parts of your body, just tense them up. And once you tense them up for a few seconds, relax them again. Do you notice a difference? Now you notice what relaxation feels like. Let's try it again. Clench your fists, tighten your shoulders, your neck, your back, arms, your feet, your toes. A couple of seconds and then relax. Now you recognize what relaxation feels like. Try it at different times when you're feeling a bit upset or overwhelmed or physically tight. Just tighten up a bit more and then relax yourself. That's the first one. Another way is to do an activity that requires both hand-eye coordination. These are also mindful activities. The reason why I say this is because we need to activate different parts of our brain. Once we activate different parts of our brain moves away from stress, fight, flight, and starts to balance itself out. And to activate different parts of our brain, one of the ways we can do this is by using something that requires hand-eye coordination and forces you to be in the present. So an example could be, let's say, drawing, painting, sketching, maybe knitting, or maybe even like work, physical work, like hairdressers and plumbers are known. And this is, research has been done, and the happiest people are hairdressers and plumbers because, number one, their clients tend to be happy with them after they visited them, and that gives them joy. But number two, they're using hand-eye coordination to a point where they need to focus into the present moment to do a good job. And that balances the function of their brain. And so they are more balanced in that experience. And you might find overall they're more balanced people, especially if they're doing this as a full-time job, because they're forcing different aspects of their brain to wake up, the healthier aspects. There's other things like, let's say, construction work. Again, hand-eye coordination is important. Movement, it all brings it together. And we undermine this. We don't actually appreciate the value of movement and how much it helps our health, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so outside of your sort of like work, even in your spare time, when you're feeling tense and when you're carrying and harboring resentment and anger and you're in a state of unforgiveness, just move around more. Just moving. If you just move from sitting to standing, from standing to walking, and actually if you make this a regular thing in your life, then you'll notice yourself relax, and you notice your attitude towards yourself change and your attitude towards others. You'll notice ease and compassion to enter you more than what you're used to. Speaking about movement, exercise, yoga, prayer, these are all activities that relax our bodies. They are the antithesis to fight and flight. And so the more we engage in these, the more we are in a relaxed state. And this is all, again, going to help you get yourself into a state of forgiveness. Sleep. Sleep deprivation actually creates a fog in the mind. And so we lose clarity. And when we lose clarity and we suffer from brain fog, what happens is we're not able to judge situations in a pragmatic way, but we become much more emotive. And when we become much more emotive in our response, we become reactionary, essentially. So instead of responding to situations, we react to situations. And reactionary are, as I said, emotive. And so they tend to cause a lot of damage to yourself and to the person or people that you're speaking with. And that goes down to being sleep deprived. So not only do you need enough hours of sleep, but actually there's also an issue of the quality of sleep. And then there's an issue of the timing of sleep. Now, someone, let's say, who sleeps at 2, 3 a.m. And even if they wake up, let's say at 10 a.m., might say to me, okay, I had 7, 8 hours of sleep, but I'm still feeling like I'm in a state of unforgiveness. The problem is that actually the body to heal and for the cells to regenerate efficiently and effectively and in their perfect optimal state, you need to be sleeping from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That time frame needs to be within your sleep. Some researchers say 4 a.m., but definitely 10 to 2, possibly 10 to 4 a.m. If you're not sleeping in that time frame, you're not getting the optimal time of sleep and quality of sleep, because that is a time when your body needs to go into a sort of like alpha or delta or theta brain state to be able to or make a space that's conducive to healing and conducive to regeneration and rejuvenation. So look back at what time you're sleeping. And then the other thing is the quality of sleep. Some of you might say, okay, I sleep at 10 p.m. I wake up at 6 a.m. I still wake up fatigued. I don't feel rejuvenated or revitalized. And the reason for that is you need to look at what we call now sleep hygiene. What are you doing before sleep? How long are you spending on your phone or reminiscing or rehashing the past in depressive, negative thinking state? And how much movement do you have in the evening hours or even in the day? Because if you don't move and you don't tire yourself, your sleep is not going to regenerate or rejuvenate you, because you're not tired enough to actually fall into the deeper levels of sleep. Because as you know, we've got different stages of sleep, and it's in the deep sleep that the rejuvenation takes place. That's not to say that we need to have only deep sleep. No, for healthy sleep, we need to move from states of light to REM to deep, and to even have waking stages. But they need to be balanced in a way so that we're actually having and taking benefit from those different stages of sleep. To get into the deep sleep state, you need to sleep between 10 p.m. and at least 2 or 4 a.m. And you also need to have good sleep hygiene so that when you do fall asleep, you're actually going into the deep state of sleep. And as I mentioned, sleep hygiene, you can there's lots of literature and lots of information about this. But the things that you need to think about is what time did you eat or how many hours? So don't eat for 2 hours before sleep. How much time you spend on technology and what kind of thoughts you have, negative or positive. So that's another way that we can get ourselves into a place of forgiveness. Here's another one. Breathing techniques. We've spoken about these before. We're not going to stop speaking about them, because breathing is foundational for healthy mental and physical state. Now, some people say breathing is divine. I can totally understand why. And if you are interested in sort of like Chinese medicine, you'll be familiar with Qigong. And Qigong is essentially using the breathing to send our qi, our energy, to different parts of the body so that the different systems are circulating in a healthy way. So the blood system, the lymphatic system, all the different, life systems that we have, for them to circulate in a healthy way, your body needs to be breathing energy around different parts. And so when you're breathing, connect your tongue to your palate. And then you can do different types of breathing, but maybe slow breathing and hold your breath as well sometimes. So 6, breathe in, 3, hold, 6, breathe out. So these are different ways that you can relax. We are actually coming up to the Maghrib Adhan, so for the call to prayer in about 15 seconds. And so this is going to be the end of the show. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And it's been brilliant sharing this with you. I look forward to joining you again next week with Dr. Ruqia on a new topic all about how you can live a better life. Speak to you again.